Sarah thought the worst part about her grandmother's death would be the funeral. She was wrong. The worst part came 3 weeks later. When she walked into the house she just inherited and heard someone walking upstairs. Someone who shouldn't have been there. What you're about to hear happened in the fall of 1987. Every word is documented in police files. Every detail recorded in Sarah's own voice. The question isn't whether you believe it. The question is, what would you do if it happened to you? Sarah Mitchell was 28 when her grandmother died. She lived in Chicago, worked at a bank, had a cat named Charlie, paid her bills on time. Normal life, normal problems. Then came the will. Her grandmother left her everything. The house, the land, all of it way up in northern Wisconsin. A place called Millfield. Population 312. Sarah had visited maybe 5 times as a kid. She remembered it being cold and quiet, too quiet. The house sat on 40 acres of nothing but trees. Built in 1923, Victorian style, 3 stories, no neighbors for miles. The closest house was old Mrs. Henderson's place, and that was still a 20-minute walk through the woods. Sarah figured she'd spend a week up there, clean it out, sell it, move on with her life, maybe use the money for a down payment on something nice back in Chicago. She took 2 weeks off work, drove up alone on a Thursday morning in October. The leaves were turning. Beautiful, really. The kind of place people pay money to visit. The plan was simple. Pack up what mattered, donate the rest, get back to her real life. The first day went fine. She found her grandmother's jewelry, some old photo albums, a few pieces of furniture worth keeping. Nothing unusual, nothing that would make you think twice. But on her second day there, while she was going through the upstairs bedrooms, Sarah found something that changed everything. A room that wasn't supposed to exist. See, Sarah had the original house blueprints. Her grandmother had given them to her years ago, along with some family photos. Just in case, she'd said. Sarah never knew what she meant by that. According to those blueprints, the second floor had 4 bedrooms, a bathroom at the end of the hall. That was it. But when Sarah walked down that hallway, counting doors, she found 5 bedrooms. The 5th room was at the very end of the hall, behind what looked like a closet door. No nameplate, no obvious handle, just a door that blended into the wall so well you'd miss it if you weren't looking. Sarah almost did miss it, but something made her stop. Call it curiosity, call it intuition, call it whatever you want. She pushed on the door, and it opened. Inside was a small bedroom. No windows, just 4 walls painted white, a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling, and furniture, real furniture, not stored away or covered in dust sheets like everything else in the house. Personal belongings, clothes hanging in the closet, a bed that looked like someone had just gotten out of it. The sheets were pulled back. The pillow still had an indent where a head had been. And on the nightstand right next to the bed sat a glass of water. Clear, fresh, no dust on it, no ring marks on the table underneath. Sarah had been in that house for 2 days. She'd walked past that door dozens of times. She was alone, completely alone. So who was living in that room? That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about that glass of water, about the indent in the pillow, about how the room smelled like someone had been there recently. Not dusty or old like the rest of the house. Fresh, lived in. She got up around midnight and went back to check. The door was closed. She was sure she'd left it open, but there it was, closed tight like it had never been opened at all. This time, when she pushed on it, it wouldn't budge. The next morning, Sarah decided to search the house. Really search it. If there was one room she didn't know about, maybe there were others. She started in the basement. Dark, musty, the kind of place where you expect to find spiders and old paint cans. Her grandmother had used it for storage. Boxes stacked everywhere. Christmas decorations, old clothes, the usual stuff you keep but never use. Sarah was moving a stack of boxes when she noticed something odd. The basement was smaller than it should be. She'd seen the outside of the house. She knew how big it was, But down here, standing against the far wall, something didn't add up. The wall was newer than the others. Different kind of wood, different stain, like someone had built it later after the house was finished. She knocked on it. Hollow. There was space behind it. Sarah found a crowbar in her grandmother's toolbox. It took her 20 minutes to pry off enough boards to see what was back there. Another room, bigger than the one upstairs, and this one had been used recently too. Furniture, a table, chairs, and covering every inch of the walls, photographs. Hundreds of them, black and white, some color, most of them old, really old. People Sarah didn't recognize. Men in suits, women in dresses from the 40s and 50s. Groups of people standing in front of this very house. All of them smiling. All of them looking like they belonged there. But here's what made Sarah's skin crawl. At the bottom of each photo, someone had written names and dates. John Miller, 1943. Betty Morrison, 1944. Frank and Helen Kowalski, 1945. All of them from the 1940s. All of them posed like family photos, like they lived there. Sarah had never heard these names before. Not from her grandmother. Not from anyone. She picked up a photo of a young man in a Navy uniform. Harold Stevens, 1943. Someone had written. Handsome guy. Couldn't have been more than 20. Big smile. The kind of guy who looked like he had his whole life ahead of him. That's when Sarah heard it. Footsteps. Upstairs. Slow and deliberate. Like someone was walking from room to room, checking things out. Sarah froze. She listened. The footsteps stopped right above her head. In the kitchen, if she had her bearings right. She waited. Maybe it was the house settling. Old houses do that. Make noise for no reason. Then she heard a chair scrape across the floor. Someone was upstairs. In her kitchen. Moving furniture around. Sarah grabbed her phone and did something she'd never done before. She started recording. Not video. Just audio. She wanted proof of what she was hearing. Evidence that she wasn't losing her mind. The footsteps started again. Heavier this time. Moving toward the front of the house. Then down the hall. Then up the stairs to the second floor. Sarah followed the sound with her eyes, tracking it across the ceiling. The footsteps went right to the end of the hall. Right to where that fifth bedroom was. Then they stopped. Sarah waited in that basement for 2 hours. She didn't hear anything else. No footsteps. No chairs moving. Nothing. When she finally got the courage to go upstairs, the kitchen chair was pulled out from the table. Like someone had been sitting there, waiting for her. But the house was empty. Every room, every closet, every possible hiding place. Empty. That night, Sarah didn't sleep at all. She sat in the living room with all the lights on, listening to the recording she'd made on her phone. For the first 10 minutes, you could hear her breathing. The sound of her moving around in the basement. Normal sounds. Then, at the 11-minute mark, you could hear footsteps. Clear as day. Not house settling. Not pipes creaking. Footsteps. And at the 15-minute mark, you could hear something else. Something that made Sarah play the recording back 5 times to make sure she wasn't imagining it. A voice. Quiet. Barely audible. But definitely there. It was saying her name. Sarah didn't leave the house that day. Or the next day. Or the day after that. She told herself she was just being thorough. Taking her time to go through everything properly. But the truth was, she was afraid to leave. Afraid that if she went into town, came back, she'd find evidence that someone had been there while she was gone. And she was starting to notice a pattern. Every night at exactly 2:47 a.m., something would happen. A door would creak open. Footsteps would move across the floor above her. The temperature in the house would drop 10 degrees in the space of a minute. Sarah started setting her alarm for 2:45. She'd sit in the living room with her phone ready to record. And every night, like clockwork, it would start. The footsteps always followed the same path. Kitchen to hallway, hallway to stairs, stairs to the second floor, down the hall to that 5th bedroom. Then silence until morning. But it wasn't just footsteps anymore. Doors that Sarah was sure she'd closed would be standing wide open. The kitchen chair would be pulled out again. The glass of water in that hidden bedroom would be empty, then full again the next day. One morning, Sarah found muddy footprints leading from the front door to the kitchen. Small prints, like a woman's shoes, but Sarah hadn't been outside, and it hadn't rained. That's when she decided to really dig into her grandmother's things. Not just the valuable stuff, everything, every box, every drawer, every scrap of paper. In her grandmother's bedroom, in the bottom drawer of an old dresser, Sarah found something that changed everything she thought she knew about the house. Journals, 5 of them, leather-bound, filled with her grandmother's handwriting. The first entry was dated 1967, the year her grandmother moved into the house. "Moved in today," it said. "The house is beautiful, large, plenty of room for a family. Though I suspect I won't be living here alone." Sarah flipped ahead. Page after page of entries about the previous tenants. That's what her grandmother called them. The previous tenants. "They're very quiet during the day," one entry read, "but at night they move around. I think they're looking for something, or someone." Another entry, dated 6 months later, "I've started leaving food out for them. They seem to appreciate it. Sometimes I'll wake up and find the plate empty. Other times, I'll find small gifts on my nightstand. Flowers from the garden. Smooth stones from the woods. I think they're trying to say thank you." Sarah kept reading. Years and years of entries. Her grandmother writing about conversations she'd had with people Sarah had never heard of. People who, according to these journals, had been living in the house the entire time. "Harold is upset again," one entry said. "He keeps asking about his letters. I told him I don't know where they are, but he doesn't believe me. He's been walking the halls all night for 3 days now." Harold, the young man in the navy uniform from the photograph downstairs. The entries got stranger as Sarah read on. Her grandmother writing about helping these previous tenants with various tasks. Finding lost belongings, delivering messages, even cooking meals that would disappear overnight. But the entry that made Sarah's blood run cold was dated just 2 months before her grandmother's death. "Sarah will be here soon," it said. "They're excited to meet her. Harold especially. He says she looks like someone he used to know. I've told them to be patient, to be gentle. She's not ready to see them yet, but she will be." Sarah closed the journal and sat there in the growing darkness. Her grandmother had known about the footsteps, about the hidden rooms, about whatever was living in this house, and somehow she'd been preparing Sarah for it. That's when Sarah remembered something. Her grandmother's last words to her, right there in the hospital room. "Take care of the house, Sarah, and let the house take care of you." At the time, Sarah thought she was just being sentimental. Now she wondered if her grandmother was trying to tell her something else entirely. A car door slammed outside. Sarah looked out the window and saw Mrs. Henderson from down the road walking up to the front porch. She was carrying a casserole dish and looked nervous. Sarah opened the door before Mrs. Henderson could knock. "Figured you might be hungry," Mrs. Henderson said, holding out the casserole. But she wouldn't come inside, wouldn't even step foot on the porch. "Mrs. Henderson," Sarah said, "can I ask you something about this house?" The old woman's face went pale. "What kind of something? Did you know the people who lived here before my grandmother?" Mrs. Henderson looked around like someone might be listening. Then she leaned in close and whispered, "Your grandmother never told you about the fire?" "What fire?" 1943. This place used to be a boarding house. Had 7 guests staying here. Good people, quiet, kept to themselves. One night in November, something went wrong with the furnace. Fire started in the basement, spread fast. By the time the fire department got here, the whole place was gone. Sarah felt her heart start to race. "What happened to the guests?" Mrs. Henderson shook her head. "That's just it. They never found them. 7 people, just gone. No bodies, no trace of them anywhere. But the house was rebuilt the next year. Exact same layout, exact same design. like whoever built it wanted to put everything back exactly the way it was. Mrs. Henderson handed Sarah the casserole and started backing away. Your grandmother was a good woman. She understood things the rest of us didn't. But Sarah, maybe you should think about going back to Chicago. Some houses aren't meant for the living. That night, Sarah didn't wait for 2:47 a.m. She didn't set her alarm. She didn't sit in the living room with her phone ready. Instead, she went to bed early, and for the first time since she'd arrived, she slept through the night. But when she woke up the next morning, there was something on her nightstand that hadn't been there before. A smooth stone from the woods, and a flower from the garden, just like her grandmother had written about in her journal. Sarah made a decision that morning. She was done being afraid, done hiding in the living room at night, done pretending this wasn't real. If there were 7 people living in her house, people who'd been there for 80 years, then maybe it was time to meet them properly. She spent the day preparing. She moved a chair into that 5th bedroom upstairs, the one with no windows, set up her phone to record everything, made sure the battery was fully charged. Then she waited. At exactly 2:47 a.m., it started. The footsteps. But this time Sarah was ready. She was sitting in that hidden bedroom, in the dark, waiting. The footsteps came down the hall, just like always. But when they reached the door, they stopped. Sarah could hear breathing on the other side. Slow, steady, like someone was listening just like she was. Then, very quietly, someone knocked. 3 soft taps on the door. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she was sure whoever was out there could hear it. She took a deep breath and did something that, looking back, was either the bravest or stupidest thing she'd ever done. She knocked back. 3 soft taps just like she'd heard. The door opened. Not fast, not dramatic, just slowly, like someone was being careful not to startle her. And there, standing in the doorway, was a young man in a Navy uniform. Harold Stevens. Just like in the photograph. He looked exactly the same. 20 years old. Big smile. Except now, up close, Sarah could see something else in his eyes. Relief. Sarah, he said. And his voice was exactly what she'd heard on the recording. Quiet. Gentle. We've been waiting for you. Behind him, Sarah could see others. A woman in a dress from the 40s. An older man in a suit. All of them looking at her with the same expression. Not threatening, not angry, just grateful, like they'd been waiting a very long time for someone to finally see them. We're not here to hurt you, Harold said. We've been stuck here since the fire. We can't leave. We've tried, but something keeps us here. Your grandmother, she helped us. She understood. She said you would too. Sarah found her voice. What do you need? Harold smiled, and for the first time since she'd arrived at the house, Sarah felt safe. We need you to help us remember, he said. Help us remember who we were, what we lost in the fire, our families, our lives, everything we left behind. And that's what Sarah did. For the next 3 weeks, she worked with them, all 7 of them. She researched their lives, found their families, learned their stories. Harold had been engaged to a girl named Mary. He'd been coming home from the war when he'd stopped at the boarding house for the night. Betty Morrison had been a teacher. She'd been traveling to a new job in Minnesota. Frank and Helen Kowalski had been newlyweds, starting their life together. Each of them had a story. Each of them had people who'd loved them, people who'd never known what happened to them. Sarah found their families, their descendants. She told them what she'd learned. She gave them closure they'd been waiting 80 years for. And one by one, as their stories were told, as their memories were honored, they began to fade. Not disappearing, just moving on, finding peace. Harold was the last to go. He stood in that hidden bedroom one final time, looking around at the place that had been his prison for so long. Thank you, he said to Sarah, for seeing us, for remembering us, for helping us go home. And then he was gone. The house was quiet, really quiet. For the first time in 80 years, Sarah was truly alone there. She stayed for one more week, finishing up the work she'd originally come to do, packing up her grandmother's things, preparing the house for sale. But on her last night there, she found one more entry in her grandmother's journal, one she'd missed before. It was dated just a week before her grandmother's death. "Sarah will understand," it said. "She has the gift, the ability to see what others can't, to help those who are lost find their way home. The house chose her just like it chose me, and when her time comes, she'll choose someone else, someone who can see, someone who can help. The house will always need a guardian, someone who understands that not all hauntings are about fear. Sometimes they're about love. Sometimes they're about helping people find peace." Sarah closed the journal and looked around the empty house one last time. She understood now. This wasn't just about inheriting property. This was about inheriting a responsibility, a gift, a calling. She never did sell the house. Instead, she moved there permanently, left her job in Chicago, started a new life in Millfield, and over the years, others found their way to her. People who died with unfinished business, people who needed help moving on, people who needed someone to see them, to remember them, to help them find peace. The house on 40 acres became a way station, a place where the lost could find their way home, and Sarah became its guardian, just like her grandmother before her, just like someone else would someday when Sarah's time came. Because some houses aren't just buildings. Some houses are bridges. Bridges between the world of the living and the world of the dead. And sometimes, if you're very lucky or very unlucky, depending on how you look at it, you get chosen to be the bridge keeper. Sarah thought the worst part about her grandmother's death would be the funeral. She was wrong. The worst part was realizing that death isn't always the end. Sometimes, it's just the beginning of a different kind of life. A life spent helping others find their way home. And sometimes that's exactly the life you were meant to live.